Let's move on to the Lady Eve.
All right, so is that the next one? Is it the Lady Eve or I Married a Witch? I forget. It's
Lady
the Lady
Eve is
Eve.
1941. I had trouble finding stuff from the mid 40s, honestly. So it's odd how things may have clumped in the past the way they clump now, kind of a thing. But
yeah. So spoilers
for the
this,
Lady, yeah.
And any movie we may talk about in relation to the Lady Eve. The Lady Eve.
Synopsis for this one, because I really liked it. We're gonna do a back and forth because the next one Theo really liked and I didn't care for as much, and I really liked this one and Theo didn't care for it as much. So the Lady Eve is about a family of, what would you call them? Con artists, including Barbara Stanwyck, who plays Jean, are on a boat, and they hit upon a mark, which is played by Henry Fonda, who's Charles Pike. Christopher Pike would be funny. That's a Star Trek reference, but no, it's Charles Pike, who's related to a great brewing family.
He's the son of the father.
But he's only interested in snakes. In fact, he's reading a book titled "Are Snakes Necessary?"
Which would make a great series of books, as you pointed out.
Yes, just anything like our car is necessary. That actually is more like, is grass necessary? So in the process of fleecing Charles Pike, Jean falls in love with him, but their romance is complicated by the fact that she is a con artist, and after he rejects her, she goes for her revenge, and they're still in love, and it has the silliest, happiest ever. Okay, so why I really like what, you unhappy with my synopsis?
Just go. You're good. You're fine. You're perfect. Go.
Why I really love this movie is that you have Henry Fonda, who, as far as I can tell, was not in any other rom-com, playing the stupid guy. And now I adore Carole Lombard. We just talked about her in Nothing Sacred, but she always played the dumb blonde. Jean Harlow was kind of like savvy, but potentially dumb blonde. We'll see Marilyn Monroe play dumb blonde. You know, there's this you watch Bringing Up Baby, which has Katharine Hepburn playing kind of the ditz. Henry Fonda is the ditz in this movie. He's a very preoccupied with snakes and very unaware of the world and what's going on in it or with him. Meanwhile, Barbara Stanwyck is clever and crafty and on top of things, and she propels the whole story. She decides he's the mark. She decides to rescue him. The only time she really loses control is when he rejects her. But even then, it feels to me like if she had just pushed a little harder, she could have kept him. But she was so hurt at being rejected that they part ways. But then she decides to get her revenge, and she gets it. And he's still confused at the end as to who he's actually with and what happened and so on. And she just plays that part with such confidence and such. She's really cool. She is really cool in this movie. And I felt like I saw the love story in it. Now, obviously, it's an hour-and-a-half movie. People have to fall in love quickly. I know this didn't work for you as well as it worked for me, but I liked the scene where they're just laying there with their heads pressed together, just talking. And he's basically bewitched by her. And she finds his bumbling idiocy kind of naive and sweet. And the same thing that the men in the movies with the stupid ladies, you know, fall for them. I think she likes just how sweet and innocent he is in his way. And she wants that for herself. And that is why I like the Lady Eve. And I don't know why I wouldn't want to see Henry Fonda regularly in a rom-com, and don't worry, I won't have to. But there was something about his weirdness in the part. He was just very weird.
So two things here. First off, right after we watched this is one of those movies I had to tread lightly because I could tell you liked it and I didn't want to I maintain for the viewers at home, which is like 2 people, that Sarah, if I don't like a movie Sarah likes, sometimes if I'm not careful about how I talk about it, she starts to bite my head off, and she is the instigator. Anyways, and she pointed out, and I agreed with her because I saw this on Wikipedia and was like, oh, right, this is what this movie is doing. It's kind of subverts the gender roles. It's kind of, you were saying something about it being feminist, I think, in jest, but it is
kind of like,
it is
why
kind
wouldn't
of
it be?
yeah. I think you said it in jest, but it is kind of she is the one who's
I
in
think what I
charge.
said in jest was, why do you hate feminism?
Right, that is what you said. Yes. And I think you're right. Again, the parts that I like, basically all that you just said are stuff that I liked too. You're just glossing over a few things that I'm now going to go back to cover, which is that Henry Fonda's character is a wet noodle. I realized like yesterday or the day before, like, this is why I don't particularly care for this movie. And it's not a bad movie. I still enjoyed it. Ultimately, I was just bored through a lot of it, which is that his character is not far enough away from white, rich, human male. Like, that's what his character is. Now, all those ditzes and those dumb blondes you're talking about in those other movies, the dialogue is often better. The dialogue in this movie was okay. I think Barbara Stanwyck gets a lot of the better dialogue, and Henry Fonda's dialogue is ultimately kind of whatever. Like Marilyn Monroe's movies, like, she has better dialogue in general, like, or Carol Lombard in Nothing Sacred, like, or not even just dialogue, but like they have an edge. Like, sure, they're ditzy blondes, but like they have something that makes them unique, whatever that may be. And like Henry Fonda's thing that makes him unique is that he's into snakes and he's a scientist, but they do nothing with that. Like they do like
agreed.
one thing at the beginning, and he has that book, and he like, it's just like, okay, that's kind of it.
Although it's funny you're reminding me, who was Marilyn Monroe usually playing against in all her movies? Rich white human male.
Right. And to be fair, I think I have this problem with a lot of those movies too, but depending on the movie, like, it's better or worse, whatever. There are other things that are more entertaining. And again, I ultimately fall on the level of like, this movie's fine. I kind of enjoyed it in places, especially as we get farther along. Like, the first half was a little bit troubling, like difficult for me to be interested in. And a part of that is because you're right. Barbara Stanwyck's character is so cool and she's so motivated. And I get why she likes this character, but she's too cool for him. She's too cool to be with this schmuck. Like, sure, she can find a nice guy, but nice guys can be interesting. Henry Fonda is boring. His character is so boring in the movie. Like, I
kind of liked him because he had this considered way of talking, and he had this kind of funny understatedness to him. And I get a little tired of the argument. It's like women can't win. Either the guy is they're putting her down by making him so cool that she can't possibly live up, and that's not fair to her character. She should be better. Or he's not good enough for her, and she needs to find, there's some better man. And she wants him, and she gets him. That's why I like it. Like,
yeah,
I
get that. I get that, and you're right, and that's totally fine, and I understand that from like the
I'm not disagreeing with you completely, but I also get a little tired. As a woman, you can't win.
I get the problem with this. I get what you're saying, and I agree with this problem, and I know that it exists, and I've seen it in movies, and it's dumb. But Henry Fonda is a wet fucking noodle in this movie.
I kind of like him as a wet noodle, but I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying it doesn't bother me.
I get that, and I think
he has that romantic line about like seeing, like, he has of like seeing them in the past and the future. I'm a little uncomfortable that he uses it twice, because maybe, but whatever.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. So here's the other thing is, if the rest of the movie was better, I'd probably be into it. But ultimately, what it comes down to is Barbara Stanwyck's character is good, and a lot of the sort of socio-political stuff around like how she's portrayed in this movie are good. But like, the filmmaking isn't that interesting. There's a couple of clever choices later on that I like, but it doesn't really start out that strong. There's a few randomly problematic bits in the movie, including something to do with like some native people in South America right at the open, which is like, I mean, again, this is a movie from 41. It's fine, but it's like the open of the movie, and then it didn't really capture my interest later. So it's like, well, and there's a number of side actors who are okay. Charles Coburn is great. He plays Piggy in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, speaking of Marilyn Monroe, for anybody who cares, they don't make actors like Charles Coburn anymore. He's like this overweight white guy who I'm sure some people would consider attractive, but to me, he's just not a very attractive actor. And it's like, they don't make actors like that anymore that much. And it's fun to see him in things, and he gets more to do in this role. Anyways, so like, there's that, but like, then on top of that, I don't know, some of the like, and there was nothing that interesting about like the audio or like the way they were shooting the scenes. And like some of the situations were clever, but then the humor didn't get me. And that's not like a fault of the movie. That's just, it wasn't funny to me. And so like, there's like, and again, the later half works better when she's pretending to be this British
heiress named Eve.
Yeah. Like that stuff's pretty entertaining.
What's
like,
his face shows up too, who's been in 9 million things. Eric Blore. If you've seen any old, he plays Sir Alfred McLennan Keith, and he was in everything for a while there. He looks British. I mean, he is British, but he has what we might think of as a stereotypical kind of a British look to him.
Well, and so then there's these gags later where like he keeps getting stuff on his suits, and he keeps like, and he's kind of like, he's a little ditzy, and like that, it's that thing where it's like, it's uneven, which is why he is just a wet noodle to me. But that stuff is kind of clever. And so like, there's a little bit of character there for him that makes him interesting enough. And so it's like that thing where it's like, if the rest of the movie around it were better to me, I'd be more interested in it. But I think that you really focus on the story as what you enjoy in movies, and that's fine. And that's why you like this, and you're willing to forgive the fact that there's a lot of
but also okay it. I think we're coming to the difference between being an enthusiast about a genre and being someone who likes movies and enjoys good movies in that genre,
right?
Because I'm having flashes to you having me watch, I think, that some noir films,
which
maybe
one?
The Stranger.
There was The Stranger, yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, where I'm like, I don't.
There are problems with The
Stranger.
Stranger.
Bad. Like,
no, you're right.
What am I supposed? I mean, I saw some of the things you liked in The Stranger, but you like noirs. You're invested in noirs. You're invested in aspects of noirs. So for you, you could kind of get into the things about it that were unique. Whereas to me, it was just kind of. I even had a little trouble with the Japanese noir our father watched this, where it's like, I don't know enough about these films to see what distinguishes this one. And in this case, it's like, why I like rom-coms is characters. Like, that's right. My favorite thing about it. And so to come across a Lady Eve is like, screw everything else. Barbara Stanwyck is awesome in this. I like Henry Fonda in it. I get your complaints about it, but he's got a uniqueness to him too that I enjoyed, and I enjoyed the uniqueness of their relationship. But for you, you're not as into these. It's not, You're having me with The Stranger a little bit kind of a situation. And yeah, I care about character in general way more, and rom-coms
have more character in general.
We'll talk about that in the next a little bit, but and to see an attempt to build up their relationship, which didn't work for you but worked for me, and for the film to revolve around their relationship instead of like external plot stuff, but it still had a pretty strong plot that was driven by her.
That is not one of the
that's kind of what I'm seeing here, is that,
and I agree with you. Like, I don't disagree. Like, The Stranger, I think, has a lot of interesting things in it, but I totally see as like the flip side of this situation. Like, you didn't hate The Stranger, it wasn't your thing. You thought it was fine, basically, right?
Yeah, and I could see what you found was interesting, but it just wasn't that interesting to me because I'm not that interested in the whole genre.
Right.
I hope you see what I find interesting in Lady Eve. It's just not enough.
Well, no, really, and as I've said, that's what I liked about the movie, is all that stuff. And that actually brings me to a point I want to make at the end of this, which is, now that we've sort of gone over this, we can say more about it. But we often we talk about like, who should watch this? That's kind of our version of like thumbs up, thumbs down. Like, and weirdly, I would recommend this above, I don't know, basically above anything except It Happened One Night. Even Ninotchka, I'd probably recommend this above if you're into rom-coms, because Ninotchka is probably like a better movie overall, at least for enjoyment and what I think like the general audience would like. It's more off the beaten path than It Happened One Night, but it's still more on the beaten path than I think maybe this movie might be, because I think this movie, it just isn't there quality wise. But if you're into rom-coms, like, go watch this. This is kind of like, sometimes in like this, the easiest way to talk about this is in terms of horror, because horror is like one of the biggest subgenre of movies. Like, more people watch like horror as a subgenre than probably like anything else. Almost, it seems like you might see, there might be a movie that's recommended to somebody where it's like, you're talking to someone and like, well, this horror movie has 3 really good kills in it. The rest of the movie isn't very good, but you should watch it for these 3 really good kills. Like, that's what this is. Like, this movie doesn't have great production value necessarily. Not sure about Henry Fonda in that role, but it does have a really interesting take on the gender roles and the female agency in the rom-com. So like, I would recommend this just to people who like the late 30s, early 40s movies, old Hollywood, Barbara Stanwyck movies. Not necessarily if you like Henry Fonda, but
it's like, not a typical Henry Fonda role as far as I'm aware.
But like, if you like rom-coms, I'd put this above a lot of other movies, especially considering where it sits in its like era.
Yeah, I don't know if I put it above or below Ninotchka, or It Could Happen. I don't know why I keep wanting to call It Could Happen to You. It Happened One Night. It Could Happen to You is a rom-com, I think, with Jennifer Lopez and Nicolas Cage. It's much later.
Okay.
That I may have seen. I can't remember.
Well, but and again,
I'm completely right. No, it's not Jennifer Lopez. It is Bridget Fonda, Nicolas Cage. Anyway, I think,
speaking of Fonda,
I think Jennifer Lopez is in Made in New York. Anyway, it Happened One Night, Ninotchka, Lady Eve. Yes, I would say the filmmaking is stronger in the first 2, but I think Lady Eve just has a standout. The last thing I want to say, and then I'm pretty done on it, is it's interesting because we've been watching these late 30s, early 40s movies to see which ones engage and mention the fact that there is a war going on, and which ones. And it's mentioned in Lady Eve because it becomes an issue about her crossing from Europe on a boat and whether or not that's possible. But it's really otherwise. It could happen anytime. Obviously not, because it's clearly the early 40s, but there's nothing really to place it in time, versus Ninotchka, which is so much about the time. And It Happened One Night is earlier and doesn't really, it's just interesting. Nothing Sacred didn't really address it as much either. So it's just interesting to see. It's not really a quality thing, but I find it interesting.
Yeah, well, and I forgot to mention this, but this is a Preston Sturgis directed movie, and he's a famous earlier director of movies in earlier Hollywood, including Sullivan's Travels, which I think is a more well-known movie of his. And I probably enjoyed over this. I'm not sure. It's not like a great movie or anything, or it is a great movie. I don't know. I didn't love Sullivan's Travels like some people seem to love it. Anyway, sorry. He's actually also a producer on I Married a Witch, which is what we're going to talk about next. And so there's something kind of interesting because even in Sullivan's Travel, like, he was somebody who didn't care for, like, his movies aren't like structured like they're, experimental films or anything, but like, he didn't care as much to follow certain trends, it seems like, between watching this and Sullivan's Travels, at least. Like, they're both a little bit they're both like, they're not exactly off the beaten path, but they're like quirks in the genre, it feels like. So it's interesting to see a movie directed by him. I don't know that I love his style overall, but I kind of get why he's thought of and all that. I mean, and he's also one of the writers.
Well, it makes me nostalgic for the era when you really could be a comedy director and a comedy writer, and I think that's been dying. I mean, obviously there is Edgar Wright.
Yeah,
and
he's the one that everybody talks
about. Is am I thinking of the right?
I'm not sure. What do you mean?
Oh no, not Michael Apted. That is completely wrong. Apatow. Sorry, there was an A, a P, and a.
You mean Judd Apatow?
Yeah, he did a lot of comedies. Like, he was known for all the comedies. He wrote. But in general, like,
he's still making movies.
Yeah. No, I'm saying it's dying, not that it's dead. I mean, Edgar Wright is still making movies too.
Yeah,
right?
They're both still making movies.
But in general, I feel like it's and we could get into all the theories, but you have a sports ball game to watch in a little bit, so we should wrap up.
We should wrap up.
I don't have much else to say about the Lady Eve. I really enjoyed it, but I agree that it's uneven.
Yes, and ultimately, even though I didn't enjoy it that much, I think it is a movie worth watching for those interested, and it's not without stuff that I enjoyed anyways.